We'll pick up now in 1939. Paperbacks began to be mass marketed. You have pocketbooks, Avon, Penguin, Bantam, Ballantine, Dell, and Scholastic. I don't know if all those companies are around anymore. There have been a lot of changes with other companies buying them out. But back during that time, remember, it's literature that's written for and marketed to. 1939, you have the end of the Great Depression. One of the things that they did to stop the Great Depression was keep kids in school, in high school. And so you have publishers beginning to target them. 1940 to 1960, realism begins to creep in. You've got 17th Summer, which we heard on the video. Some people say that that is the beginning of adolescent literature. It was the first contemporary novel, or first contemporary young adult novel to recognize drinking, smoking, homosexuality, and other taboo subjects as realistic aspects of life. 2 years after 17th Summer came out, a magazine called 17 was started, and it was named after that. When you talk about hot rod, street rod, I know I had some students that would read those books. I don't know about Two in the Town. We've already heard about Catcher in the Rye and To Kill a Mockingbird from the KWell videos, that some people say that those are books that started the adolescent literature movement. So there are a lot of opinions out there. I'm going to stick with The Outsiders. But anyway, in all these books, we talk about the realism there that they have. This is where we come up with that Bildungsroman. So you have the development, the maturity of your young protagonist in these novels. All right, let's move to the 1960s. Notice that first one listed in the box on the right is S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders. I believe she wrote that when she was 15 years old. And if you think about it, 1967, pretty soon it'll be 2017, so we're coming up on an anniversary here. But these books are considered, some of them are the YA classics, the young adult classics, especially The Outsiders, The Pig Man, and The Chocolate War. I think you should know those 3 books. Now, I've never read them. I don't think we need to read them, but we can know about them. So, S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders, Paul Zindel's The Pig Man, and Robert Cormier's The Chocolate War. If you look through those titles, how many of those do you think you would recommend? How many of them would pass the standards that have been set by best books, that would pass Philippians 4:8? I'm not saying that every book that's written since 1967 is not to be read. I just think we need to be a little bit more careful and discerning. I'm sure there are still some books that are being written that can be read, but we need to be discerning. Notice the list of authors and the titles, just going down through that, looking at them. These are some of the things that students are reading these days. Alright, it talks about problem novels, the new realism, self-discovery. When we talk about problem novels, a lot of times we're talking about books that deal with an adolescent's first encounter usually, with a social or a personal problem, whether there's alcoholism, abuse, foster care. And so, again, the Bildungsroman comes to play with that. So problem novels, very prevalent. Characteristics. I would like you to learn this list. It seems like different people have different lists. These are generalizations. It says usually includes several of the following. I don't know of any book that would have actually all of them. It's kind of like country music where the dog dies and he loses his job and his car breaks down and his wife leaves him. You know, that doesn't happen every time. It's just you seem to see the same traits. You have a teenage protagonist. 14 to 17 is most common. Told in first person point of view. They're narrating the story. Adult characters are in the background. The main characters are usually teenagers. Parents are usually unsympathetic or incompetent. Hard to honor someone that is portrayed like that, and you don't see them portraying worthy and admirable characters. There are a limited number of characters. Protagonist takes a step toward maturity or self-understanding. Controversial language and or current slang. There's a compressed time span. Detailed descriptions of appearance and dress. Few if any subplots. Social issues. An approximate length 125 to 250 pages. If you think about it, if you have a book that's 125 pages, you're not going to be able to have many subplots. You're not going to be able to have many characters. So because of the length of the book, the shortness of the book, you'll be limited in certain areas. So some of them have to do with the actual book itself, its length, number of characters, first person point of view, few if any subplots. Some of them have to do with the characters. Parents unsympathetic and incompetent, controversial language, detailed descriptions of appearance and dress, because that's what many teens are consumed with. Alright, I would like you to know these characteristics. You want me to say that again? Please learn these characteristics. It's rote memory. Please do it. Genres, we've got romance, problem novels, science fiction, fantasy, historical fiction, mystery and detective, horror, which is also called shock fiction. I guess while we're here looking at the genres, what is the difference between science fiction and fantasy? I wish I were able to dialogue back and forth with you, but this is something that's on our top terms for AdLit. With fantasy, that's something that could never happen. It's in the realm of the supernatural. Animals talking, people going against the laws of nature. That would be fantasy. Science fiction could possibly happen. Someday, through advances in science, that might come to place. And that would have to do with futuristic stories, outer space, maybe because of technology, maybe because of the political situation, a dystopia situation. I mean, that could happen. I remember in the 80s when I taught 7th grade lit in our book, there was a story about a girl who was homeschooled. And back then, homeschooling wasn't that common. But she would go to her computer, turn it on, and a teacher would talk to her. And she was reading a story about the fun they had. It was by Isaac Asimov, and I think that's the title of it, The Fun They Had. And she would daydream about how students would get together and have recess and have friends. And she was kind of wistfully longing for that. And I remember discussing that with my students. No, that will never happen. Well, it has come to happen. Okay. So from the 1970s on, they say it's a higher quality of writing. And I remember, because I started teaching adolescent lit in 1999. After 2000, YA survived the turn of the century as a separate genre and is alive and well. And I remember reading an article, I don't know if it was in the English Journal. I don't think I was getting Allen at the time, but they were talking about is adolescent lit going to survive? Of course, back then, a lot of people were thinking about, what is the turn of the century going to bring? Y2K, were computers going to crash? Were things going to change drastically? Would the world come to an end? And of course, not much happened. It was pretty uneventful. And so the conclusion of this article was that yes, adolescent lit has not only survived, but it is alive and well and better than ever. So people are still writing, kids are still reading, and we still have adolescent lit, and is definitely a genre that stands by itself. 2009, a new term came about called New Adult Lit. Notice St. Martin's Press was the first one that used it, and this is for readers in their early 20s. The idea with the New Adult Lit is that you have older young adults, 18 to 24-year-olds, and these are books that are written for them, readers in their early 20s, who are now a new market that publishers see. Okay, I guess we have our sources there where I compiled this information from. I really didn't pay much attention to what came from where, just kind of sat down with these books one day and compiled the information. And we have the history of adolescent lit. You have the dates that we talked about, you have the definitions. Remember how, be able to think through how literature has changed back from when things first started being written down, and it was to instruct and to delight, and it stayed that way for a long time, and things have definitely changed since then. The last thing I'd like you to do is to read through an article that's called Bad Books for Kids. You have a dad, and he's a conservative person, but based on the autobiographical or the biographical information, I believe he's probably a Roman Catholic. Anyway, he goes in a bookstore and he looks at some of the adolescent lit and gives his take on that. So please read that. I ask some questions on a discussion, and I would like you to answer those, and then after Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, sometime during Saturday through Monday, go ahead and respond to what others have written. Okay, that concludes our work for week 2. God bless you. If you have questions, please ask me, email or call or text, and let me know how I can help you to do well.